A dying Australian man is being denied the chance to farewell his 4 young children as Queensland authorities enact a hardline approach to COVID border security. Mark Keans has terminal cancer and is not expected to live until Christmas. His dying wish is to see his 4 children, aged between 7 and 13, to say goodbye. But the problem is the children live with their mother in Sydney, and Queensland Health officials say because borders are closed, only one child can cross the border from New South Wales to say goodbye. Queensland Premier Anastacia Paluschak insists it's not her decision, saying instead it's the decision of health authorities. But as State Premier, she does have the final say on who comes across the border and who doesn't. She's already granted an exemption for Hollywood actor Tom Hanks and for AFL players and officials to self-isolate at private hotels. A short time ago, Liberal National Party Shadow Health Minister Ros Bates told our producer Bridget Burke the lack of humanity and compassion shown makes Queenslanders sick.
Queensland Health finally agreed to apparently allow one adult and one child to be picked up at the border and taken to the hospital for 1 hour. And this dad just wants his kids to see their dad before he gets any worse. And this has been going on for a month, and they can't afford the flights or the hotel quarantine. And how you could actually make a decision for which child it is that's allowed to come across the border is just inhumane. I couldn't imagine that if that was a family member of mine, where my 3 sisters and I had to decide which one of us was going to go to our family member's funeral.
Who made the decision?
Well, obviously Anastacia Paluschak is the Premier of this state. She is the one where the buck stops with her, and she keeps blaming the Chief Health Officer for all of these incidences, where she, as a Premier, if she had any compassion, she would actually override any decision and make sure that loved ones can be with their family, especially when they've got cancer and they're dying. I mean, that is just inhumane.
What pressure is she coming under in Parliament and in the court of public opinion?
Well, Premier Anastacia Paluschak has rolled out the red carpet here in Queensland for Australian rules football players, for officials and their families to all cavort around in a resort in my own electorate, mind you, while everyday Australians who've got critical medical conditions have been ignored or rejected. And it is time for common sense, for consistency and compassion, and not special deals to sporting stars and celebrities. And it seems that under the Paluschak Labor government, there is one rule for the rich and another for everyone else.
What would you do to help this family, Ros?
Well, Bridget, I'm a nurse, so my compassion is always worn on my sleeve. I mean, the first thing I would do would be to make sure that these families are together. These families aren't at risk. There are 4 kids who want to be with their father. I mean, for God's sake, it's not that difficult a decision to make. And for Premier Anastacia Paluschak, the Labor Premier, to keep buck passing it to the Chief Health Officer, she could make that decision right now, today, like she could for many other decisions here in Queensland. And Queenslanders are sick to death of Anastacia Paluschak blaming everybody else and then having different rules for celebrities like Tom Hanks. I think the thing that sticks in the craw of every Queenslander is when Anastacia Paluschak said the Queensland hospitals are only for Queenslanders. Now, we are Australians first before we're Queenslanders. So, the family just want to be with him. I mean, they're not going to make him any worse. The man is dying. He just wants to see his kids.
And yet you've got the family and wives of AFL players coming to sit poolside and enjoy their good time there. Is that correct?
Absolutely, and it makes Queenslanders sick to see that 400 AFL officials, I mean, these aren't even the players. These are all the sidekicks and their wives and their kids who are all at running around in the swimming pool and at the bar at the Mercure Hotel in my own electorate. Yet we've got people here like Mark, we've got other people like young Sarah, a Queenslander today, who hasn't even been allowed to go to her father's funeral. She tried to get an exemption to get here, to be with him before he died. He's since died, and the Premier has not even reneged and allowed her to go to the funeral today at 2 o'clock. She's missed saying goodbye, and her 12-year-old sister had to say goodbye on her own with no support from her big sister. I mean, that is just horrendous.
There does seem to be a lack of continuity in the way the rules and exemptions are applied, which must be galling for those in this position of terminal illness and loved ones and final farewells. It is hideous. Is there any hope, realistically, in your view, Ros, is there any hope of a rethink on this that will favour the families?
Look, the only way that we can get a decision made on this is to shame Anastacia Paluschak into it. And the media have done a great job over here in Australia and here in Queensland. People have had enough. They can see the double standards. As I said, Paluschak has one rule for the rich and one rule for everyone else. And I can tell you that their priorities of this Labor government are all wrong, and Queenslanders will pass their verdict in 51 days at the next state election.
Ros Bates speaking there.